Here's hoping it really works. So first things first, there's obviously some explanatory text happening here over this initial camera work in the star field. Kind of makes sense, given that we're going to jump right into the game. But, in some ways it also doesn't make very much sense because, that's what they ended up doing in the actual game itself anyway. Interestingly, it looks like this initial video they had in pretty much the proper shape to begin with. There wasn't a whole lot different in that first scene. Those guards had some darker uniforms in the demo than they did later on. But once you get into the battle, they're pretty much the same. Again, in battles here, if you haven't seen this, you get Barrett and Eris right away in the demo, which is not something, obviously, you get in the final version. It really wouldn't make sense to have Eris there, certainly. Barrett would make a little bit more sense, but as you can see, when you get Barrett later, it makes a little bit more sense narratively, the way it's done. And it helps explain the way the game works a little bit better when it's done later. No items dropped in the demo by those guys. So, that's okay, because there's no menu in the demo. So there's really nothing worth actually getting from those guys. They loaded that up later just to make it a little bit easier in the final version of the game. Worth calling out here that we are using more generic terms for Soldier and Avalanche here. This Cloud is referred to in the demo as just an ex-soldier, but obviously in the final version of the game, which you can see on the screen right now, Soldier is given the all-caps treatment that we're more familiar with. Avalanche is also treated that same way, but not in the demo. And, yeah, I mean, Jesse here, it's, pretty generic. Yes, soldiers are supposed to be the enemy. Every soldier is the enemy because there's nothing special about these soldiers whatsoever. And Cloud just gives his name as Cloud, but obviously being a properly JRPG game, you actually get to pick it in the final version, naturally. Barrett has a little bit more of a potty mouth in the final version. And as you notice from the early text, probably, they call the Mako plant the Makoro plant, which I guess was the original name for it, and not really good. You also get to name Barret in the final version, and you get a little bit of help explaining how to maneuver around the field of play that you don't get in the demo. Nope. Haha. See, it turns out that it's pretty difficult to actually play a game, watch the video of a different game, and talk all at the same time. That did illustrate an interesting glitch in the demo that is not present in the final version, and that is that when a character interacts with somebody else in the battle party, until they get another turn and take another action, they actually turn and look at the person that interacted with them, whether it was Eris smacking Cloud there, or if we do a healing later. You can actually see Cloud turn that way and just kind of get stuck looking that way. Now, these more advanced guards in the khaki-looking outfits here, I don't believe that you can actually encounter them in the main game. Or at least not this early in the main game. I don't get far enough in the video here to actually do a side-by-side comparison, which is partially my fault. But it's interesting that, well, I'll show it again when we get into another battle, but it appears that they made the Aerith model in battle less chesty as they went toward the final game. So in the final game, Barret is waiting here for you in this room, and instead of being a part of your party. So in the demo, you can see him exit Cloud's body in that JRPG way of showing that they need to separate for a cutscene. But in the final game, Barret is just waiting there, and that's because he's not going to join the party until this point. I assume in making the demo, they thought that perhaps the game would be too complicated for Western players, maybe, to not start with Barret in the party. But it makes a lot more sense this way. Oh no, and there's that crash! I swear that I've played all the way through this properly. No crashes before. Oh, so frustrating. Well, while I bring this back up and try to catch up one more time, I will point out that one thing that we were seeing there at the end, and you can still see, or you could see. Actually, I'll just roll the video back because, hey, what the heck else are we doing at the moment? Too far. Good job, scrubbing. So as we go through these doors, it's a small thing, but interesting, that in the demo, you have to interact with the door itself to get it to unlock. But in the video of the final game, as you can see here, you have to actually interact with the character who is going to open the door for you in order to get them to unlock it. I feel like that might have been a nod towards players who have played JRPGs before, and probably would make the assumption that you would need to actually interact with a character to get them to do something like opening the door. Let's see how quickly we can get through this time around. Get caught up. See, not so bad when you have the opportunity to fast forward. I like that. Oh, we got some hedgehog pies. Always fun to talk about hedgehog pies. Skipped right through a limit break there. But since we did just see a very fast limit, I'll point out that the HUD for the battle here is a little bit different. It's going off screen now, but they haven't come up with the actual limit break name yet. They were still calling it Special, which, okay, why not? Okay. I'm a big fan of the glowing button, whereas in the final game, as you can see, Jessie is more direct as to where she wants Cloud to go, so they made the button not sparkle in front of you. Now here's a big difference with Cloud, is they widened his eyes in this scene a great deal. He looks like his eyes are nearly touching on his face in this demo, and they wisely altered that for the final version. Jessie's eyes also were made darker. It looks like they're brown in the final version as opposed to the pretty bright blue in this demo, which again makes sense because, you know, Cloud having the old Mako eyes is a part of the game, and taking those same kinds of eyes away from Jessie is a good way of, you know, drawing attention to that kind of specialness. Or at least for the people who look at this, you know, 20 years later. I'm hanging out here just a little bit so the video can catch up without me messing with it, because I'm lazy like that. Because this room got changed some in the final version. It's definitely looking more run down here. And also that exposition that happens with Jessie is not necessary in the demo because you don't have to do an interaction button to get on a ladder. You can, but you're not required to. And we've fallen behind again. I suppose maybe that means that the encounter rate was upped a little bit for this version in the final release versus the demo. Which really makes sense. The battles don't differentiate themselves too terribly much at this part of the game, so it's not a bad idea that there's not as many of them. And there's another item on the ground there blocking our way to Jesse. No heroic jump over to the ladder there, just a little hop. And no save point in the demo, which, you know, makes sense because it is in fact a demo and we're not doing that much with it. And run down here. And suddenly we're towards the end. We'll hang out here just for a second while the video catches up with this battle, because this battle here against the two sort of robotic soldiers and the larger machine, that'll show up again in the demo here momentarily. And there's some differences there as well, because this mech has been greatly reduced in scale, it seems, for the final version, and his model has been upgraded quite a bit too. You'll see here in a second when we run into him in the demo that he's quite a bit mankier. I guess I saved here just so I could say that I did it, but hey. And of course there's a materia there that I didn't end up adding. That's the first materia you can pick up in the actual game, but again, because there's no menu in this system, there's no way to know if that system is actually implemented in this demo, because you just can't get to it. Cloud has a more vernacular way of talking in the demo as well. They polished up his speech pattern some in the final version, and you may have noticed that in the final game there was a little bit of a red screen and you know, some warning text there that didn't appear in the demo. It seems like they added that you know, to go along with some of the stuff that you know, will happen in the game later. Okay, so here's a battle. You can see that the mech is way bigger this time than it was in the final game where we fought this guy earlier, and that's because this is kind of taking the place of the boss battle in the final game. They seem to come to understand that maybe it wasn't quite as exciting to have a boss battle, or they were just trying to obfuscate it some and not give the whole farm away in the demo as to what they were planning here. But in any event, there's no or the battle that we will fight in the final game doesn't actually appear in this demo. There you can see that that bug again, where Barrett will now stare at Cloud as thanks for healing him, until such time that he takes an action of himself of his own. And Cloud, meanwhile, will point at Barrett while casting Cure on himself, because okay. It's also worth noting that the memory cursor is on by default in this demo, so it will always be showing me the last command used, which really bit me in the butt the last time I was playing this. Anyway, we'll pay attention here. And now we'll use Chesty Eris's Healing Wind, which is the same as in the final game, but you actually get to see it here. I find it interesting that they have the barrier meters on each character because there's no way to actually apply a barrier in this demo. So they obviously had the system for that built already, but gave us no way to interact with it. Surely for simplicity's sake. Alright. Now, in the final game, you see, we had a real boss to deal with. So, you know, we'll hang out and check that out. Like I said earlier, you know, I don't know if they just didn't want to give away the scope of this boss because, you know, the animation, the size of the thing compared to your characters, all that stuff, it's pretty impressive compared to what we've seen in Final Fantasy games before. So they may not have just wanted to, they may have wanted to avoid giving away that secret to start, but it's just as likely that maybe they didn't have this guy ready yet, so they just threw a slightly tougher random battle in as a placeholder for the demo. And we'll skip ahead just a bit here, because obviously that guy is tougher than the battle that we had before. Should be just about done now. It's also worth noting how much lower Cloud and Barrett's HP are than in the demo. They really didn't want you to lose in that demo, which makes sense. If you lose before the end of the very first demo you play of a game, how likely are you to go out and pick up the actual copy when it comes out? This battle took longer than I thought. There we go. So, the final game gives you 10 minutes until the reactor bomb goes off. The demo only gives you 3 minutes. The reason for that is because in the demo, the counter doesn't actually mean anything. It's just a narrative device. In the final version, the clock runs while you're in menus, it runs while you're in battles, it runs during all of that stuff. And if you expire on that clock, you do in fact get a game over. Again, that's not really something that they wanted to do for purposes of a demo, so they threw in that whole thing, but they don't do anything with it. Now, if I didn't have to, you know, play through the whole thing, should it crash later? Knock on wood. Oh my god, I said the word crash and it crashed. That, I guess, voice-activated commands? I don't know. That's wonderful. Okay. So, clearly, the crashes were caused more by the fact that I was streaming it simultaneously than anything that was actually happening within the running of the game, which is super unfortunate because I'm trying to stream it. But we're so near the end. So near. Let's just do some more fancy fast forwarding and see if we can't get back to where we were. One more time before I just go and cry. Now that I'm playing this 3 or 4 times in a row at high speed, it seems like there's a little bit more structure to the encounters in this demo. That you're kind of guaranteed to run into at least one with the guard dogs and the soldiers in this room, and this one with the 5 dog creatures is new, but maybe there's a little bit different blend between forced encounters and random encounters in this demo. It's a little hard to tell. Such apologies for the amount of crashing in this game. Oh no! Did I go back up? I went back up. I'm such a quality game playing guy. Here we go again. No, this is the monster formation that we crashed up against last time, so let's hope for the best. Oh my goodness. I'm being punished. I've done something wrong. Horribly wrong. The models are so much more polished in general in the final version, which is obviously no surprise, but it is, I mean, almost a little bit of a surprise. They must have gone back there and put quite a bit of extra work in. Now back to this faux boss battle. Okay. Let's see what we can do about finishing this off. I love that they give Eris all 3 levels of Cure on that for this demo, and enough MP to actually use one should she so desire. Might be a little bit ridiculous overkill when she can't even use all materia to bounce them around. Yeah, 3 minutes until detonation and I cry when this... Okay, I'm not going to say the word. Jinx it. Alright. There's a lot of odd camera work that happens here. They definitely refined that in between the start and the end. Also, here's where I remember that Barret also has magic. Okay. Saved Barret's limit to get through the next annoying battle that we run into. You can see how this map changed a little bit from the demo to the final. And we have to go a little bit further to save Jessie this time than in the final. Obviously, with the timer actually meaning something in the final version of the game, it didn't make sense to make the player run even further to get to Jessie. So they just cleaned up that map and made it easier to deal with. You'll see another change in that regard momentarily. Okay. Now here, 2 minutes remaining. Oh goodness, no! We have to rescue old Biggs as well. We do not have to do that in the final version of the game, which I believe will be coming on screen here in just a second. Yep, there we go. We'll run over there and take a quick look and confirm that. Where are we? Ah, we got hidden back there. Okay. Oh, our video friends have made it to the elevator already. Let's catch up with them. Oh my goodness. Let's see if we can get through this battle quickly. All right. Back to our flashy button. And again, we have to go talk to the door instead of Jesse. And get into another battle, of course. This part obviously plays out pretty much the same. And we can see we wrap it up here. The demo gives a little bit of advertisement to the game coming in December.